Hey guys, how's it going? It's your boy M.K.S here, back with another video and another topic, I suppose. I know I do talk about politics quite a lot. I suppose this is quite a political video, and it's 1 in the morning, just after 1 in the morning here in the UK. But anyway, I've been thinking about this idea for a while, but having so many ideas on my mind, it was difficult to focus on one thing. But yeah, I'll try and get to the point, as I often say. I'm hoping, I often think that if I put the ideas out there, I'm hoping that eventually people will see them and help to bring them to life, so to speak, or help to put them into practice, in other words. So I think the quicker I put these videos out there, hopefully the quicker people will, I hope people will fall in love with the idea, so to speak, or at least help to put into practice. But I suppose sometimes it's hard to sell an idea to others. I think the first person to sell it to is yourself in terms of belief. But anyway, China and India have a lot in common, and I think it'd be great if they worked together, these two great nations, i.e. large in this case, great meaning big. Yeah, the fact they were colonized, the fact they were divided, and lots of things like that, I think are things they have in common. But anyway, I'm going to crack on with the list of my ideas for part one. I know I do these 4-part videos, and I break them up into 4 parts, and each one has 10 ideas or thoughts for each one. So anyway, I hope you enjoy it out there and share it with people from China and India, or people of Chinese and Indian descent, and Chindians, mixed race Chinese and Indians, anyone with any Chinese or Indian blood all around the world, and hopefully they'll enjoy it and see potential for this being something that could be a really big, productive and great network between two great nations. Great, as I say, meaning large. Anyway, here goes. So number one, as I say, they do have a lot in common. To be honest, it's a shame, but I think they do have a lot of suspicion about each other. I think it's difficult if they don't trust each other. I think it'd be great if they could bring that trust and talk about the benefits of working together. For instance, the disputed territory, I think it's called the Golan Heights or something like that, in the Himalayas. And I think that'd be great if they use that to train together instead of fight each other. So like they could trade together and train each other and do counter terrorist drills and things like that, and look at how they can train each other's militaries and things like that instead of fight each other. I think that'd be pretty cool. But yeah, I think the first thing is they've got to try and trust each other. Obviously, the two nations are already part of the BRICS. These are developing nations: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. I think we've got in the right order. But yeah, they're already part of the BRICS, basically. So I think they already have that link. And I think a Chindian partnership specifically would be great. This is also part of a larger Asian network. I'd love to make like Pan-Asianism and stuff like that generally. But I think between these two great nations, I have so much in common, really, rather than what they do have a few things that are different. Obviously, there's a lot of difference between them. On that note, I'd love for you to comment what you think China and India have that's different, or what you think they have in common. Some similarities and differences between them, basically, to simplify it. And also, if you're from China or of Chinese descent, or if you're from India or of Indian descent, I would love to know, especially with Chindians as well. People have both ancestries. I'd love to know what you think. What you think of this idea. Do you think they should come together or not? Obviously, the main people who decide would be Chinese and Indian politicians. Anywho, moving on. Number 2, it'd be great to look at what they can learn from each other. I'm sure, and I think historically they've learned a lot from each other over many years. Historically, they have a lot of great trade and a lot of relation between each other. What they learn from each other. Obviously, 2 of the biggest populated nations. They're both in Asia. They're both quite near each other. Obviously, they share a border, and lots of things like that. They're both colonized. They're both divided, and things like that. So they do have a lot in common. It'd be great if they looked at that, and also, as I say, what they could learn from each other. 2 very hardworking and intelligent groups of people, intelligent and clever. Going on my alliterations, which I often talk about. If you've seen my other videos, you'll know. I'd say clever Chinese and intelligent Indians, but that's just alliteration purposes. But yeah, I think both have similar mindsets, hardworking, and that kind of. They have hardworking, driven mindsets, and I suppose you could say, to be honest, both are quite money-minded, if I'm honest. Number 3, I'd love to promote freedoms, libertarianism, basically across Asia, human rights and things like that, as well as animal rights. And I think it'd be great if libertarianism was promoted. I'm a bit of a dreamer, you can probably tell, but I think, with China being like pretty much a communist country in many ways, I love for them to become more libertarian and look at what freedoms they should have, what freedoms other countries have, and things like that. And India as well. I'm sure that, say, for instance, in families, giving children more choices and things like that, giving your children more choices. I suppose one thing about Asian culture, or even culture generally, that I'm not a big fan of is like having to respect your elders. But basically, I would love to promote libertarianism across those nations, across Asia, including China and India. Number four, by working together, hopefully they'll promote peace. I hope they won't use it to invade other nations, and I hope somehow it won't. Again, you can probably tell I'm very much of a dreamer, very idealistic. I'm very much of an idealist, and I would love for them to work towards peace, not violence, and maybe be part of a network of former colonies generally. I talk about my 5 causes, and I suppose I'd love for China and India to be part of that, perhaps, maybe, again, probably a pipe dream, but I thought I'd mention it anyway. Number 5, they could help each other, talking about dreams and goals and things like causes. They could help each other with each other's causes, like China's aim to get rid of poverty, India's quest to become a $10 trillion economy, China's quest for growth, India's quest for growth, obviously. I'm sure they have similar ambitions. And again, they could have cooperation to sort of look at how to prevent invasions from other nations. They could train their militaries together, and maybe even have a joint military. And again, the border, which is often disputed between China and India, that could be used where they could cooperate on projects, whether that's architectural, structural, engineering projects, projects in STEM, projects in trade, and that kind of thing. They could, and all sorts. They could help each other's businesses to trade with each other and things like that. And again, just work towards similar goals. Maybe politicians can meet up in those areas. Military personnel can train each other. Again, Chinese and Indian military personnel, and maybe even have a joint military. But I hope it will be used for peace, not to make more wars. As I'm a pacifist and conscientious objector and that kind of thing myself, or interested in that kind of thing. I suppose, I say conscientious objector, although I've never been asked to join the military or that. So I suppose conscientious objectors are probably not such a term that's necessary in Western nations nowadays that much, like Britain and America certainly. But even if there was, I would be a conscientious objector and a pacifist and stuff like that. So I hope the militaries will be used. Maybe having that military presence could mean they'll feel less of a threat. And that kind of thing. Also, they could support each other's social media, content creators, YouTubers, influencers, and stuff like that. I'd love to have, to be honest, I would love to have loads of Chinese and Indian and Asian generally. Obviously, I welcome any subscriber really and viewer and that kind of thing. So I'd love to have as many as possible. I mean, obviously, not everyone, unfortunately, in those nations can get online. So, but that's another thing that governments could help. So that would promote their own YouTubers and things like that as well, helping them to get online and stuff like that, which would be pretty cool if I had like 2 billion subscribers. That'd be pretty amazing. Hard to imagine right now, really hard to imagine. But anyway, moving on. Number 6, as ever, I would love to encourage investment into Italian football. I'd love for Chinese and Indian companies. Sorry, I was going to say. I think I was trying to combine 2 words again there, as I often do. But companies and even the governments themselves, the Chinese Sovereign Wealth Fund, the Indian Sovereign Wealth Fund, and others across Asia to invest in Serie A teams. Maybe in China's case, going on alliterations, it would probably be Cagliari or Catania or some Cremonese or some club that begins with C. And with India, it would possibly be Inter. I would love for Indonesia, possibly Malaysia, India, and Indonesia all to invest in Inter, perhaps, given the alliterations, and with Malaysia and like Milan and all that kind of thing. Or Malaysia maybe could invest in AC Milan as a side note. But I'll say I would love for India to be part of this Chindian group, as well as like a wider Asian network, and also the MIISAS group that I want to make as well, as a side note. Anywho, so yeah, India would be part of lots of groups. I also hope, I hope it will be a mutual benefit, and they can help each other to reach their full potentials, their citizens, and reach their dreams and goals and things like that, both Chinese and Indian individuals, and they can help their citizens as much as possible in both nations, and tackle poverty and grow together and things like that as well. And as I say, invest in Serie A and Italian football teams generally, and build football pitches in Italy. benefit of the club and country, and in their own home country as well, like in China and India as well. So they can, like Italian teams can practice with Chinese and Indians, especially at youth level, and hopefully all three nations will benefit. Number 7, also Celtic. I also hope to promote, I'll say, human rights, minority rights, rights for different religions, ethnic groups, and so on and so forth, especially my fellow Eurasians or mixed race people generally. I hope to promote those sorts of rights. Number 8, tackle extremism together. And again, I suppose both have got a lot in common. Now, I'm going to use these words, obviously not myself, but I'm going to say that people call them, like people use the P word. They call them, I could just say the P word, but they say Paki or Ching or things like that. So India and China have a lot in common in terms of people of Asian descent can face discrimination sometimes in the UK, US, and elsewhere around the world, especially in the West, where again people could say Paki or Ching or things like that. So again, I'm not using that word myself, of course. I'm just saying that's what people call them, and maybe they can turn that into a positive. I hope to remember and include that again in point number 28, like turning many negative situations, like the fact they were colonized and divided and stuff like that. I know I mentioned that a few times, but yeah, looking at what they have in common rather than what they don't have in common. I'd love to see more Chinese and Indian people talk about not so much what they hate about each other. Maybe they can include that a little bit, but mainly what they love about each other, and they could talk about what they dislike or even hate about each other's country. So maybe that's something that could help them to improve. But I think it'd be great to use that hate to make a positive thing and turn it from hate to love. As hate rhymes with hate, I normally try and turn it to love and talk about love instead. Number 9, also what they have in common is lots of great poetry, art, writing, projects, generally architectural and engineering projects and things like that. And they've created some great work, again, having a great work ethic. So that's another thing they have in common. And I love for both nations to celebrate each other's poets, artists, writers, and again, Asian nations just generally as well. This would be part of something which I want to, something broader, which would be for all of Asia, like a Pan-Asian group, which I hope would be mainly in Central Asia. I know that's another side note, but again, celebrating Chinese and Indian poets, artists, writers, and other such things like their projects, architecture, engineering, and all sorts of feats that they've achieved. And number 10, I hope they'll empower the young people, again, especially practicing and playing football with Italian teams and Celtic, and also Italian teams, Serie A teams, especially as a top league level, and maybe the national team as well, especially at youth level, to have like academies and training centres in China and India respectively as well. So hopefully it'll be a benefit to Italian football, Celtic FC, India and China in this case. But generally, obviously, the trade and stuff like that hopefully will benefit China and India economically as much as possible. Hopefully they can have supporters clubs and academies for Italian football and Celtic, Serie A teams and Celtic, as many Serie A teams as possible, and maybe they can produce lots of great players. Again, I hope that will benefit Italian football and Celtic as well, through those having more fans and maybe even producing some great players in Asia, in places like China and India. And I would love to know what you think about China and or India, either one or both, and what you think what are the similarities and differences between them, and maybe, although I don't want to cause division, I want to bring them together, but maybe which one you like more and why, what China could learn from India, what India could learn from China, and what not. And yeah, especially if you've visited either of those nations, what do you think about them? What could they improve? And how do you think the relations could improve between China and India? I'd love to know those sorts of things as well. So please don't hold back your feedback in the comments, especially if you have been to these nations or you have opinions, or anyone who can have. Everyone probably has opinions, but also obviously people. I especially welcome people of Chinese or Indian descent or from India and China, and especially Chindians. I'd love to know what you think, especially. But again, everyone welcome. I'm going to stop waffling. I am out. Peace and love.